Hello and welcome to your Inner Self Garden tutorial. In today's lesson, we're going to be using intentional creativity to look into our inner selves and create a garden, find the flowers inspired by those inner selves to build our page. I'm going to be guiding you through 3 versions of ourselves, but you may have other ones that resonate with you more deeply. Or if you are drawing and creating and other flowers or things are being called to be put onto your page, ask them who lives there, what self is coming through, and what that means to you. I want you to know that there is no way you can get this wrong. When we create with intention, we are asking ourselves to be open to the possibilities of what's coming to the page, and we take enjoyment in the process rather than what's coming out at the end. So let's get started. We're going to start with a circle. If you're working on a piece of paper, you can put your circle in the center, or if you're working within a book, let's make our circle to connect both sides of the paper, representing both sides of our body and connecting both sides of our brain. Take a moment now. We're going to take a deep breath, and I want you to feel into your body, locating your inner child. Where in your body does your inner child live? And I want you to think about what your inner child needs to feel in order to thrive. When you have those feelings in your mind, I want you to think of a flower that represents those feelings for your inner child. And then we're going to add them to our book. If you need to pause the video at any time, go ahead. For me, that flower was the buttercup. For me, the buttercup instantly takes me back to my childhood, going for walks with my parents, where we would look for buttercups, or I would look for the buttercups, excited to hold it up to my chin and their chin to see if they love butter. So spread your flowers all over your page, different sizes. We want to save room for 2 other kinds of flowers at least. I also like to take notes as I go along. Sometimes a meaning comes up that I wasn't expecting, or a message comes up. So if I'm working in a notebook, often I'll flip the page and write those there. Or I keep a scrap piece of paper beside me or a journal so that I can take notes as I go along. The next inner self that we're going to look at is our inner superhero. So think about what it would feel like to be in your highest confidence. What does your inner superhero want to project into the world? What does it feel like to be that superhero? What is that superhero's power? And then think about what flower would represent that superhero. For me, the flower was the dandelion, which to me represented being resilient, can be often overlooked. It is one of the first flowers to pop up in the spring. It's bright. Bees love it. It helps them to pollinate. It has healing properties. So go through the virtues of that flower that relate to your inner self, and then start to add them to your page. Let them overlap with your other flowers. Try different sizes. Next, we're going to look at our future self. So take a second to project yourself into the future. Imagine if you had achieved all your goals. What would that feel like? You're comfortable in your life. You're filled with joy and happiness. There's nothing more that you need. Think about what that feels like, and what flower would represent that future self. For me, the flower was the peony, which to me represents an opening and a freedom. So to draw a peony, if you want to draw along with me, I start with a bean shape. Then I come out from the 2 edges, and then a little one over the top, and then I shade in the center. Next I do the bottom petal, and they're very wavy, a petal on top, and then again a petal that comes out from the inner sides. And then we start to build the petals all the way around. Now that you have all 3 flowers, you can start to play around, putting them onto your page, playing with different sizes and shapes, letting them overlap. You can try putting in some buds and a little bit of leaves. Know that it's okay to leave some space in the background. Your flowers don't have to cover every single piece of the paper. As I mentioned earlier, you may be called to add other flowers or designs, and you can always ask them what or who is being called forth there. Since we're talking about our inner selves, ask which inner selves they represent and what qualities. Now it's time to choose the colors for our flowers. You might pick the colors that go with the flowers, or you may pick colors that are not traditional for the flowers. That's up to you. Remember, there's nothing you can do wrong. I've chosen 2 flowers that use a lot of yellow. So for my buttercups, I've chosen to add some white, and then for the dandelions, I'll add a bit of magenta or red, just to make the yellow a little more on the orange side. For the peonies, I'm using magenta and white, and I'm double loading my brush, meaning that I'm putting pink and white on the brush at the same time and allowing it to blend on the page. Then I go back in to some petals and I add magenta to the bottom just to darken it, and white to the top. Play around with your colors and allow them to mix in different ways. Notice what's coming up as you're coloring in your different flowers. If you're painting a flower that has a lot of white, say for example a daisy, you can put your white down and add a bit of Payne's gray or a darker color, purple or blue, to the edges while the paint is still wet and allow it to blend. When you're ready, you can add the centers to your flowers. I chose a dark color for the buttercups and yellow for the peonies. And then you can add in a few leaves around your page or onto the buds. Remember, you can leave space for the background. We don't need to fill it completely. Think of it as leaving space to grow, having room to grow for your inner selves. Choose a color for the spaces in between your background. I chose to go with black, one because it'll make the flowers pop out, but also because black represents the cosmos to me. It's a sense of mystery. So choose a color to represent your background. When you're finished your flowers and background, now it's time to choose a word, a phrase, or a quote to put into our center, something to tie it together. Feel into the flowers in the space that you've created. What wants to be said? For me, it was, be yourself. I've watered down some black paint and I'm going to write messily in my center, be yourself. I wanted it to look like a messy ink, so I write it in with the wet paint and then scratch it a bit with the back of my brush, and then add a little bit of splatters. I hope you enjoyed this process, and I would love to hear what came up for you and see your work. You can find me at www.buildingwingsstudio.com. I'd like to end today with a poem by Morgan Harper Nichols in her book All Along You Were Blooming. And whenever she starts to forget the story of her original bloom, the flowers of this green earth remind her she too will spring up from the ground again. Gravity will not restrain her, for the sun and rainfall will propel her up from gritty soil into open morning air. And light will meet her there, and she will begin to unfold in the way she is meant to.